Honey, we need to chat.
Hello, welcome back to
Honey, We Need to Chat.
Podcast all about communication in relationships.
The communicator.
And we believe
That when communication stops,
bad things happen.
bye-bye.
You always say stops and I always say dies. Who's the dramatic one? Anyway, welcome back. We are really excited about this week's episode.
Man,
We've actually just recorded
buzzing.
it. We're buzzing because we were in it and now we're doing...
We're in our Patreon episode,
so
so
we've
go
been
check
all
it
over
out.
the
Don't
place.
miss out on the Patreon podcast episodes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of content over there.
Over 16 episodes now of bonus episodes.
We go deep.
We do go Jeep. We go Jeep.
Deep and deep.
Anyway, this is a really, really exciting episode, guys, because this is our very first Honey,
Number
We Need
one.
to Chat guest episode.
Mhm.
And we have some incredible guests joining us.
Yep.
Luke and Susie Holt.
Mm-hmm.
They have been radio presenters together for many years. I think she said in the episode that they started when they were married for 4 years and they've been together for 20 something. So
more than 9.
More than 9 and more than 12. Many, many years of experience on radio, doing content creation together, hosting their show. They've got a podcast now. They've got a great initiative.
Documentary coming out.
Documentary coming out. And I think it's all under the name Flopping Fatherhood. I keep saying flopping. As you'll hear, it's flopping.
You got to say flopping.
Flopping fatherhood.
Lose the G. Flopping fatherhood.
Yeah, and it does make it easier. So to say, incredible guests. We really came right out of the gate running with this one. So good luck to anyone else we get on as guests. We're really excited to see how it goes up from here. This is an incredible chat. We really love talking to these guys, and we think you'll be really encouraged by it as well.
Enjoy.
Well, we are really excited today, everybody, because we have our first Honey, We Need to Chat guest joining us.
Mm-hmm.
And
I feel like a real reporter.
I know. A reporter?
Yeah, like because I interview someone, so I'm like reporting.
Exactly.
I feel like a real interviewer.
We feel like reporters tonight. Yeah, real interviewer. Yeah, we're good.
I feel like the thing that I'm supposed to be saying right now.
Cool.
But I don't know what that
Perfect.
word
And I'm
is.
glad that's how you feel.
Perfect.
We are really excited to have Luke and Susie Holt with us.
Welcome, guys.
Very excited.
Hey.
Luke and Susie are an incredible couple. They are content creators. They have had their own radio show together. They have driven me home many times as I grew up. And I'm very excited to be talking to them today.
Literally.
Not
Hopefully
literally, but in my ears. Safely, yes. Yep. Always keeping me and my family company. So I'm super excited to have them here. And Blair has also been having a really amazing interaction with Luke in the last couple of months as well. So you want to share about that?
Online bro dating.
There we go.
Bro dating. Yeah, absolutely. It was real cool, man. Like, so I got your contact through a mutual mate of ours and just said to get in touch with you about our podcast and everything. And it turned into so much more than that.
Yeah.
Like the conversations we had were about manhood, dadhood, and like you said, bro dating is what we called it. But Luke's been an awesome just person to chat to, even about the podcast, about what can we even do here? Where should we go? So just your insight into all of those areas have been just absolutely amazing and encouraging for me to, bro date alongside you, man. I love it.
And bro
One of the things, bro dating. I love the connection that we've had, but I love the fact that you guys, through your podcast and through the conversations we've had, do what is one of our favorite things in the world to do, and that's be deliberate. Like there is nothing about our marriage that says, oh my goodness, we're so much better than everybody else. But one thing I do know is that when we see and experience a problem, and we can talk it out, then there's a deliberate attempt to go, well, how do we do better at that? And then how many times are we going to fail after that? But we keep going, but how do we do better at that? And in the conversations that you guys have had, and I've been hearing on the podcast and conversations we've had, that's what I see in you guys. And so that's a big part of the resonance for me. And so I've opened up actually a notepad here, because when you went, honey, we need to chat, I went, oh, that's right. We're probably going to have a few things we're going to need to chat about afterwards off air. So I'll just take the notes there to go, let's address this after. A few things will come up, I'm sure.
We do that as well.
Yeah, we do that.
Sometimes we pause the recording. We're like, let's have this conversation now.
Now,
Yeah.
We gotta wait till after the episode.
Well, do you guys process that differently? Because this is the challenge. We've done a radio show together for many, many years, and in the record mode for the last 8 years or so. And I'm oh, wow, we've just had a thing. We've got to sort it out now. But Susie's no, I've just got to get the job done. We can sort this out later.
Yeah.
And it was so contrasting.
Yeah, it depends. Like we've had a couple of moments when we were recording where it's actually we've hit a topic which has hit a nerve, and it's like we actually can't progress in that episode until we.
If we did, you would just see us get real like cold, and my face would be red. So we have to kind of talk it through.
But it's a lot of it, and this is what we say in the podcast a lot too. Like it's sort of talking about what you're going to talk about after. You know, like so a lot of times we'll have a conversation, we recognize we're not actually going in a good direction or something, and then we pause, we breathe, and then we come back to it a little bit later.
Absolutely. And we definitely tackle things really differently, kind of like you guys. I often we actually go kind of differently. So if we're stressed, I'll be like, we need to talk about it now. But if it's kind of a normal thing or I'm caught off guard, I'm like, don't talk to me now. I need to process. So we kind of flip-flop a little bit, which is a nice guessing game.
Basically what we learned from all of it is that we would all benefit from constantly living in record mode so that we can stop, edit, change, pause, all of those things, as opposed to having to live in real time all the time.
And like delete or go back or whatever. I always want to do that on live. Sometimes like, can I just rewind like a few of those things I said? Actually, and editing's really fun too, because I edit and I can see my face sometimes in the conversation. I know that Blair said something that's irritated me, or I'm like a bit more intense inside.
That happens rarely. Okay,
inside, sometimes. But when I see myself in the recording, I'm like so calm, and I'm like, he's got no idea. He's got no idea.
So can I double check, Blair? If you were going through the editing process, would you have also picked up that facial expression, or just Amy?
No, I only really find out later that night when I'm sleeping on the couch. That's it. No, that's not true.
It's so much fun though doing it together, which I'm sure you guys have found as well. It's really such a blessing.
It is kind of cool. I was thinking about this the other day as I was preparing to chat to you guys, and thinking the privilege we have is that even when we say something and explore something in our marriage that is difficult, like in the studio doing a show, your job is to pay attention and listen to the other person intently and to respond in a way which is healthy. And we don't normally have those moments when we've got kids and we've got like, we're actually usually at our worst when it comes up. Whereas doing the show, when we address that stuff, it's kind of almost, it doesn't mean you don't get it wrong plenty of times as well, but it's almost like the best recipe to be more at your best, because there's witnesses too. People are going to see it.
And a little thing called professionalism that we don't take into our marriages. Amateur
husband and wife, professional radio people.
That's so true. It's a really unique opportunity to be able to kind of be removed, but in it really deeply at the same time. So we're pretty lucky for that. There you go, guys. Everyone just start a podcast or a radio show with your spouse or your partner, and you'd be fine.
Foster a good environment.
It was even better when it was a live radio show, because we would always talk about the fact that we mastered the art of the 3-minute fight. Because you can't, when you're live, you don't get to just pause and come back to it. So whatever you had to sort out, it was the length of a Justin Bieber song is what you had.
That's awesome.
So
Justin Bieber in the background.
So every now and then you put on the long song.
Let's play that one again. It's going to be
because and especially in this live show, like at the end, once you've had this fight while the song was on, when you put that mic back on, you have to sound like you like each other again.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can't have a different tone. People will pick up on it.
People always try and play that game and go, I bet you were fighting that day. I reckon I could hear it. And that's like the number one game of listening to us as a married couple on the radio, was them trying to pick when we were fighting, and almost nobody ever could. They always picked the times when we weren't and never picked the times we were.
That's true.
What a healthy culture they've built for themselves, listening out for other people fighting. Nice and encouraging.
I think it was kind of like there's something kind of cool about the voyeurism of it. Like where it was like, it's this kind of, are they normal? Are they irritating each other? Like this is the thing that came out, is to go, oh my gosh, you guys fight about the same things we fight about. Like,
And that's really why we do this show. And I do leave some of the stuff in that we discuss, not the really deep stuff that we can't kind of really get into. But I think the heart behind it was, we want people to see other couples navigating things. And some couples will have lots of people in their lives that have a constructive way of navigating differences. But some couples will have no one in their life that they've ever seen or observed navigate a challenge that that comes up in normal couples. And so we thought we can at least be one example of just a couple going through life and navigating those things.
It's like you need two channels, and the one that people pay for is, honey, we need to talk privately.
And so what? It is a little bit like
those
that
conversations.
on Patreon.
Patreon.
It is a little bit more open.
And the image tile of that is just Blair with his head in his hands.
Exactly. His mascara
Smiles are gone.
That's
a good idea. We'll do that next
Because I feel like your relationship would be like ours, where of course both people make mistakes, but one of us in the relationship might tend to be more oblivious at times than others, and I feel like that.
Me, obviously. I think that answers your question. One of us is a bit more oblivious.
Yeah, I was going to say as well, another reason, again, having you guys on is so special to us too, because why we're doing this podcast is so we can hear and see different perspectives. And I remember I came onto your podcast, which we're going to get to in a moment here, the Flopping Fatherhood, and that was awesome to speak on. But I don't remember specifically what I said because a little while ago now, but I remember I started having an opinion and then you spoke into that same opinion, but through a slightly different lens. I'm like, oh man, you asked me this question and yet you've got such a better answer. And that was really, really cool for me because I was like, oh, this is actually great because again, verbalizing and vocalizing our thoughts and opinions and whatever and getting other people to speak into that, I think is where we have grown so much and how we continue to grow. And you guys are speaking to that as it's been so special. So it's awesome.
Yeah, we're really excited about the angle that you guys can bring to this discussion on relationships as well, because otherwise we become a bit of an echo chamber, just us. Yeah, going back and forth.
And we've nailed it.
You're a pretty awesome echo chamber, if you ask me. I'm a fan.
Well, can I tell you guys something that listening to your podcast has been really helpful for us in our marriage is when you guys talked about carrying the mental load and the challenge, Amy, that you threw to Blair, which was, but when you ask me what we need and every element of doing the shopping is still on your mental load, then he's not really helping you. Yeah. Like, sure, you're going to the shop, but I had to do all the prep work. Yeah. And so on the back of that conversation, I'm like, oh my goodness, I do that all the time. And so there is lots more moments where I've been conscious in these scenarios with Susie to go, just like, is there anything you can think of? I've got this sorted, or part of the conversation where it's like that's a really good skill and it's a really good understanding that just because I think I'm doing something doesn't mean I'm actually taking the load off. So it's not about what I do; it's about the outcome. If I'm wanting to be helpful, what am I removing from Susie rather than how do I puff my chest out and feel like I should get a medal on it?
Yeah, that's so good.
I don't know how often I've got it right, but I know I'm more. This is the thing: when you're conscious of it and you improve, you do it better over time, right?
Exactly.
So different.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with a friend about this. Actually, so many friends about this recently, and that's it. It's not about like you have a conversation and all of a sudden your partner understands completely and it never happens again, and there's like you're on the same page and you both agree. It's actually just about highlighting that this is something that you're navigating, then becoming a little bit more aware, and you both just kind of become a little bit more aware and sharpen your journey as you go. But having the conversation, which is why we talk about communication, is what I think is the pivotal part. And that's awesome. I love that feedback.
Yeah.
And it has been huge for us as well, that change.
Yeah.
That's cool. Thanks, Luke. Love hearing that.
Well, thank you guys.
Oh, well, you're welcome. You're more than welcome. Well, we'd love to, now that we've introduced you and then also had a massive conversation, which was awesome, we would also love to hear
that's the intro done.
Can you tell us a little bit more about you guys, your journeys, and more about the Flopping Fatherhood podcast?
All right, well, why don't we start with the Flopping Fatherhood?
All right, I'll do a really brief start to that and say it's really important that you drop pronouncing the G because the very specific flopping.
Yeah,
because my dad was a beautiful, pure Christian man who never swore.
Yeah.
But he effectively replaced every swear word with the word flopping.
Flopping.
So it was flopping this, flopping that. He was watching the cricket. Australia was losing, got flopping useless Aussies, flopping no good. Here they go again, flopping falling apart. And the more I flop and do for you, the worse you flop and treat me. Like he was basically a potty mouth, clean Christian guy.
Yeah.
I love
I know the kind.
Yeah. And it was this thing that just became a big part of his character. And he'd mumble it quite a bit too, because it came out mostly when he was a bit unhappy. So it was this mumble flopping. There's a bit of a muttly thing going on. And but it became a part of how Dad was known to us. And there was this flopping word. And my dad passed away a number of years ago now, and it was there's so long we could take in this story, but the short version of it is I didn't grieve overly well. I put walls up, and I do the hard things and I don't feel things. And so I do everything to avoid the emotions. And so I'm the one who called everybody, and I did a lot for the funeral, and everybody else is having their emotional moment, but I tend to avoid that. Like I am quite an emotional guy. I cry lots, I feel lots, but I do it in a way that doesn't really fully give myself a chance. The risk to break is an important part of processing, not just the tears. I cried during Con Air.
Oh, so did I, man. That was an amazing movie.
Right.
Don't
that bunny, obviously.
The bunny moment.
Far out.
Yeah, right. Okay. You're the first person I've ever told that story to have any affirmation, let alone the enthusiasm behind that. I knew I liked you.
I see you, man.
There we go.
Right, yeah.
I don't know. I just need a moment with Amy. Amy, let me tell you, when we were dating, he told me this, and he cried telling me that he cries in Con Air. This is serious stuff. Oh,
Yeah.
Amy's never seen the movie.
I've never seen it, so I'm just laughing, and I'm probably laughing so hard listening.
Date night.
Classic. I mean, Nicolas Cage and Date Night is perfect. So in the midst of all of that, we had this open mic session at Mike, because Dad loved a cuppa and a chat. Mm-hmm. So we went, let's give a mic and get everyone to tell their stories. And there was a whole bunch of stories that came out that we'd never heard before. But one of the things that really struck me was I was talking about quiet dad, reserved dad, shaking his head dad, and his cousin, who was his best mate growing up, went, I don't know what David you're talking about, but that's not the David that I remember. And it really struck me that he'd spent so many years of his life in chronic pain that we had kind of forgotten the personality before he was in agony.
Yeah.
And I realized so much of who Dad was has been lost because of 20 years of pain. And there's these stories that maybe I should tell these stories. And that idea has kind of grown and grown and grown. In the radio show, we had a guest fathering expert on the show that talked about how important the role of media dads are to be able to replace those who have an absence of fathers. Just having dads in the conversation and the stories was really important.
And particularly that aspect of nurturing fathers, because for many of us, the generation that we grew up in, the fathers that we had weren't nurturing, they were providing fathers. But now the expectation is that fathers are present and nurturing and involved and engaged. It's a very different type of fatherhood than what was modelled by their own dads. Yeah. And so, and Luke kind of is exploring that a little bit as well in this journey about the impact of his dad, who wasn't particularly nurturing, but he's trying to become a nurturing dad, and how do you kind of translate that?
Because the research shows that the key ingredient for a new dad to become a nurturing dad is that they understood that nurturing is a part of being a dad. Yeah. And the key way for them to understand that is their dad was nurturing. Yeah. And so if you don't have it, then the likelihood of you breaking the cycle is low.
Yeah. Wow.
But that's where the role of conversations and stories and groups of other men sharing stories about dads and other people. There's not just because this is the part where people go, flopping fatherhood, it's about being a dad. No, it's as much about being a child.
Yeah.
About the fact is our identity is shaped so much by our relationship with our father, good, bad, or indifferent. And we have different experiences. My dad was a good man. He was not an abusive man. He was a loving man. But he never got taught the role of a dad to be gentle and caring and affirming and nurturing, especially to a male. So my sisters had a slightly different experience. My older sister expressed that she had a more nurturing experience with dad than I did. And so we have a different, so it wasn't about the quality of the man, it's about what he was taught it meant to be a man and a dad. And then the cycle that gets perpetuated versus the one we're looking at, well, how do we break it? My dad was good, but he wasn't nurturing. So how do I actually break that cycle and become a nurturing dad with my boys?
Wow.
There was a video I saw you guys came out. I'm pretty sure it was with Flop and Fatherhood. A video where you interviewed your own kids. I think you weren't in the video, Luke.
I wasn't in. Susie was in. She interviewed the children.
Yeah, you interviewed the kids. Can you guys tell us about that? Because that got me in the dad spots for sure.
I think this was a really vulnerable thing for Luke and a very brave thing for Luke to do, where we set up that I interviewed our 3 sons and I asked them about their dad. And we spoke to them quite a bit beforehand about it being this is a really safe space. And part of the outcome of this is dad wants to be a better dad, but he can't be a better dad if he doesn't know what needs he's not meeting of yours.
Wow.
And so we asked questions about whether or not they find him to be nurturing and whether they what they love most about dad, but then what they find really challenging with dad. And in the midst of that, we made some really key discoveries. Like we have one of the things that came out was just their desperation for his time, that when they think about, at that point when they thought about their dad, they thought about he works all the time, to the point where he could go away for 2 or 3 days and the kids just assumed he was still working and home. They didn't know because he was working so much, and that's their priority. They talked about they desperately want to just play at the park. They just want to kick a football or throw a football or go fishing with their dad, but he can't because he's busy working. That came up a lot. And the other thing that came up too is we've got a son who, when he was very young, was diagnosed with anxiety. And I think this was the thing that really hit you particularly hard, was that he raised about, all 3 of them raised about what happens when Luke gets angry, that because he's a big man, he's a loud man. And Royden talked about the fact that he gets anxious when Luke gets mad. And I think that really hit Luke, to think that, we'd spent years trying to support him through and learn how to cope with anxiety, but not realizing that in the midst of everything, he was contributing to the problem.
Yeah, and the other part of that hit me was with the other son, he's a social justice. He's a beautiful little soul. But when asked about what dad could do better in that, he said, "Well, it's not what dad can do better, because we do these things, we do the wrong thing, and that's what makes him angry. So it's really about us being better." And that broke me to go, there's at the time a 12-year-old child taking the ownership and weight of me not being able to control my temper when I'm tired. Like, no, that's not okay for me. Like, I get that I'm human, but he should not be wearing that responsibility. He's the child, and I need to grow up and be able to take control of that and not make them carry that weight.
Yeah, it's valuable insight. I think, so many of us don't get that insight into any relationship, let alone parent to child. So it was really valuable, and that was the first thing we did in the Flop and Fatherhood project. So before we did the podcast, we're now looking at stretching into developing this documentary. But that was the very first thing that we did. So it was very raw.
Well, and it was important for 2 reasons. One is because at one point I sat down and started to write a letter to my dad. And to summarize it, it started off with "Did you even see me?"
Oh man, yeah.
And then it turned into, "But did I really even see you?"
Yeah.
But all the way through was, "I wish I'd written this letter before it was too late." And in the back of this, I went, there was these conversations I never had with my dad. I never said to him, "Dad, I'm struggling with the fact that you don't know me." And I never had the chance to explore the fact that I wasn't really giving him the credit he deserved either, because all I was worried about was I didn't feel seen. And then I stopped and it was actually, I was exploring this concept, and there was a movie I watched, which I don't normally watch Christian movies, but this just came up, and it was the I Can Only Imagine movie.
Yeah.
And it was, the thing that struck me in this was his dad was described as a monster and abusive. And then he got sick, and then he had found God, and basically in the end this character got to spend a couple of years with a reformed dad before it was too late. And it just struck me to go, oh my gosh, I didn't have this conversation with my dad. But it's not too late for me to have the conversation with my children.
Absolutely.
And that was the motivation behind that interview, is to go, before it's too late, how do I ask them? How do I help to know whether I can see them better?
Yeah.
Because I can't ask Dad anymore, but I can ask them.
And can I say, it's opened the gates of their relationship completely.
I can imagine.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been really transformative actually in the home. Yeah.
And for me, like, again, like, coming from a dad perspective, and I remember sharing with you about it when I after I watched it, and even just listening to you talk now, like, I was getting emotional just hearing you share now, because it's so true, you know, for a lot of guys not knowing how to receive that feedback, not knowing that it's okay to receive that feedback, and it's not a sign of weakness when we do respond in a positive way to those things, you know, like, but at the same time too, like, how powerful is that in a relationship setting as well? Like, you know, so for you know, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever, to be able to create that space where you can speak into that and actually get a clear understanding of areas we need to grow in, areas that we've accidentally hurt someone in, you know, just what you said there about your, you know, when you get angry and your kids get anxious, man, straight away I'm like, that's my situation. You know, my kids, that happens with my kids. You know, I had my oldest boy come up to me, and he's like, he's constantly talking to me about how he likes to make me happy when I'm angry. You know, and it's this like this. It broke my heart, because I'm like, that is not your job. And when you understand that what you're putting on your kids or your partner, it is heartbreaking. But I mean, from that we can actually grow, though. You know, and that's the beauty out of those conversations. But having the conversations is so hard and so important.
Well, I mean, it's a really key ingredient for whether it be about us as parents or whether it be in our relationship, is that so much is hindered because of fear of weakness and fear through shame that we can't address, and we can't, you know, change, and we can't acknowledge, and we can't listen to each other because of this shame and this fear. And as a man, we're taught you're supposed to be strong and you're supposed to have it all together, and so we're afraid that if we explore weakness, then how pathetic will we look and how broken will we look. And as a husband, you know, to think about and to actually genuinely open up and have this vulnerability is scary, because it comes with the shame and the fear of everything, finding out that you are stuffing things up. And so the key, both for us as parents with our children, what we're trying to do, but we have to do it with each other as well, is how do we remove the shame? How do we remove the fear? Because that's what gives you the strength to actually address the stuff. If you create safe environments. Now, it doesn't mean that, well, no, it's fine, everything's fine. Everything's not fine if you make those sorts of mistakes, but you've got to be able to actually put it on the table in a way which isn't tearing down the individual, because we're all, you know, frail, broken humans who make mistakes. And sometimes people can see them more than others, but we've got to be able to cope with the fact that we're going to get things wrong. Somebody else is going to get things wrong. But our commitment is to actually be stronger together.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what we talk about. We talk about an attitude of curiosity all the time on the show. And for me, one of the reasons that I am the way that I am is I observed my parents a lot, and I spent a lot of time trying to figure out why they were the way they were, or they interacted the way that they were. And my dad was a man with a lot of insecurities and things that really weighed on him. But I loved him because he was my father, and I loved my mom because she's my mother. And I had this love for them that was, what's the word? Unconditional. I had this unconditional love for them. And so I had this unique perspective into them because I unconditionally loved them. I could also see the things that they did that was damaging, and I was able to kind of be like, oh, that's one of the reasons why they do that, or that might be what sits behind that, or that's the insecurity. And so it kind of became how my brain worked. And so that's what I've tried to bring into our marriage, and we do together is, and we try to bring into the show, is having an attitude of curiosity. People don't just wake up and hurt people. Like, they don't just, usually that doesn't happen. And so if you can have this insight that you've had through doing this project is so amazing, because you know what's going on for you. You can work on what's going on for you. You can work on the communication with your kids about what's sitting behind those things for them as well, so they understand it. But you also get that perspective of, oh, this is the damage that can be done, especially if there's not that communication there and they aren't aware of why I'm doing this or why I react this way. So I just love that insight. I think that's such an incredible way of going about life, relationship in general.
Yeah.
Susie's an incredibly wise woman with so few words. And I remember one moment where she she has a way of simplifying a lot of my emotional overwhelm. And I came back from a therapist and I was talking about this realization of some of these triggers that I was experiencing and through poor mental health in my family when I was growing up. And what we discovered through this session was, for me, high emotion meant high danger.
Yeah.
And I won't tell all the stories behind it, but there were some really significant things we unpacked. And so what we backtracked was we realized that every time Susie expressed emotionally, then I had all these alarms going off subconsciously. Danger, abort, shut it down, argue it away, walk away, do whatever you can to lower this emotion because this is not safe.
Yeah.
And then I, in doing that, was acting in ways that was triggering Susie's little responses. And so we kept escalating the simplest fights into the biggest ones. But Susie said to me in this moment, when we came home with this and we saw this high emotion means danger, she goes, oh, well, we can see that now. We can do something about it. And it just struck me to go, how beautiful is this understanding, this curiosity that you talk about, is that when there's something that you can understand better, you can identify it and you can actually navigate it easier than if it's just secretly, subconsciously being enacted and triggered.
Absolutely.
And simply, something like that is just as simple as me now knowing that if I need to express something emotionally, and sometimes I do, sometimes I just need logic out the window. I just need to get my feelings out. I tell him that that's what's going to happen. I just frame it beforehand with I need you to know you're safe. I'm going to say a whole lot of things. They're not actually at you. This is just me feeling a whole lot of stuff, but
Yeah. Well, it's got to the point where Susie doesn't even have to say all that stuff now. She just says, I need to express my emotions. And then in my head, and I haven't said this to Susie before, I literally sit there and I have a mantra to go, this isn't about you. High emotion is not unsafe.
That's awesome.
Listen. That's it. That's all you've got to do right now is listen. And whatever I feel is okay, I just don't express out of what I'm feeling in response to it. Because this isn't about me. This is about Susie being able to express emotion in a safe environment. Because it needed to be safe for her to express. Because the flip, I could say, high emotion's unsafe for me, so therefore you're not allowed to express emotion. But that becomes unsafe for her when she's emotional then.
But bringing this stuff to light, and it happens across the book, because even I think about discovering how the children responded to Luke getting angry, it didn't automatically stop him expressing anger the same way with the children, but it did change what happened after, in that it wasn't just left, that's the end of the discussion. It's now followed up with a sit down with the children and often an apology, not necessarily for what was addressed, but for how it was done, and more of a healthy conversation. So it's sort of, and I think bit by bit, it's certainly happening less and less now as time goes on, those angry outbursts.
Although on my notepad, I've just written that I was a little bit expressive with my children today, so I have to go back and. But I think the thing is, so we have a very deliberate way of apologising in our family. There's a structure that we're to do it well that we go, and it's not. I'm sorry if there's no sort of grey areas. We say we name what we are sorry for. So I'm sorry that, and even like it's not. If you got upset, I'm sorry that my words, when I said this, that you felt like I'm sorry that I contributed to. I'm sorry I made you feel. Like we go through the point of understanding. I have to name what I'm saying I'm sorry for. And then at the end, the really important part, so it's important is to apologise conclusively, to name what I'm apologising for, and in the end, the hardest part. Will you forgive me? Because all the power goes to the other person.
You say that's the hardest part.
Really?
The hardest part for me is that I can't actually do that unless I'm actually sorry. And so sometimes there's actually quite a bit of space between the argument and the apology, because I can't.
You have to be ready.
I can't. I actually have to genuinely be sorry and actually genuinely want to change my behaviour.
Well, see, I think it's interesting for me because I can be sorry for how I've spoken without having to necessarily backtrack the thing I was trying to express. Because as much for me, it's as much about how I express things as much as anything to go. And we had one the other day where Susie really kind of challenged me with how I responded to her, and I stopped and I realised what she got was stressed Luke. That had nothing to do with her, but my expression, not meaning to actually even take it out, she was my saviour in a situation, and yet she copped all the emotion and stress and overwhelm in my tone and in my word choice. And I had to go, I'm so sorry that you are not the one who should be receiving that, and that this is the stress I've been feeling. This is what has come out of it. I'm sorry that I spoke that way and made you feel that way. That is not okay, and that's not who I want to be. And was able to name it, because that wasn't even about, because that wasn't correcting what I thought. It was literally becoming more aware of how I process. Like, this is with the kids. I can say they should have been in trouble. They should have been corrected.
Yeah.
But I also should have controlled my emotions and been a grown up and not been. So we can sit down and we can go through, and even if I'm not saying that I said the wrong things, how I said it is just as important.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that conversation after that is the biggest thing. And that's what we really try when we go through Reddit stories, and we really do try to show another perspective sometimes, because if you can kind of give it a little bit of a different perspective to what everybody else would maybe give it in the popular media, then you can kind of see where someone might be coming from. And a conversation after is so important, because we're going to make mistakes, like you said. If you can come back to it and have that conversation in a constructive way later, you're growing from it. And that's huge. Hey guys, just wanted to pop in and take a sec to talk about the extra content you can find over on our Patreon and our Spotify subscription. We have a fun little community growing over there with extra episodes, extra stories. We're also going to have resources, messages back and forth, and also submitting listener stories through that portal as well. So
also outro themes.
If you want to be a part of our closer knit community here at Honey We Need a Chat, please hop on over to Patreon or Spotify subscriptions and join us there. We would love to see you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. What I'd love to hear from you guys, because you have worked together for so long, we've worked together in different capacities and we love working together, but it obviously presents its own challenges. And because we're all about communication, how has that worked for you guys? I know on air we've heard a little insight into how the communication might have worked, but in terms of working as a partnership, how has that played out for you?
Yeah, it's been really, for us, I think in some ways it advanced our relationship at a faster rate, and in other ways it probably slowed it down. Because we started working on air together when we were married for about 4 years.
Yeah.
And we're hitting 21 this year.
Wow.
So for most of that, we've been on air. Now, I think it worked for us in that it gave us a forum where even in the hardest times of our marriage, we still had this space, this enclosed room that had microphones and a desk, that we had to be kind to each other and we had to laugh together and we had to have fun together. And I think that developed our communication to show us that even when things are hard, we actually can still enjoy each other and delight in each other and find some common ground at that time. The ways that I think it stopped us developing in other ways is that I think it probably in some ways kept us a bit immature. I feel like there's issues that we've only discovered in the last couple of years that weren't addressed because maybe we lightened some of those hard times. I think hard times are really important for the development of a marriage, for the fullness of what it can become. And I think we might have inhibited those a little bit. So one thing that came out recently, and for once we're going to focus on my flaw.
Oh, wow. Excellent. Jump in. I'm just really interested because this is the first time I've actually even heard her talk like this. So this is new to me as well.
But I think I was stuck for an extra long time of interpreting everything that Luke, once I got to that point of interpreting, because, you know, in those early days of marriage, everything's great and you've got this person who's on your side and they're constantly for you and everything's wonderful. And then there was a point where suddenly I thought Luke was out for his own interests and it was fighting against my own. And then I started interpreting his behaviours and thoughts through a lens of the worst possible intention. And that was not what he was thinking. It was not what he was feeling. It was what I was putting on him. And we do this with people all the time. We constantly interpret people's behaviour through our lens in a way that people don't actually think that way.
What would we be thinking and be motivated if we did that? And that could be completely different from the other person.
And completely not even real. But I think I spent an extra long period of time interpreting Luke through that lens before we actually recognised that that's what was happening and confronted it. And it was confronted by Luke keeping on saying, you seem to think the worst of me. You seem to think I'm out to get you. And so I think, I don't know, I just think maybe in that sense, it might have just held us back a little bit, but in other ways, it helped get us through those tricky times.
One of the things that, and I've said this in the part of discovering this process, and I know it annoys Susie every time I say it in the middle of a fight, because she tells me so. But there are times in the midst of it where Susie will use the words, you were doing, or you meant to, you're feeling this, or you were upset and you just wanted it this way, or you just, and I'm like, hang on a second, you can tell me what I did or how I made you feel, but you have no credibility to tell me what I was thinking or what I was motivated by. Yeah. There's only one person who's actually credible on being able to communicate that. Now, that's no excuse for my behavior. No. And you can tell me how my actions made you feel or how I came across to you, but you can't tell me what I was thinking when I said it.
Let me tell you,
because only one person can do that.
So let me tell you, my discovery is that most of the times when I was thinking that Luke had ill intentions and was sometimes actively working against me, he wasn't thinking anything at all. He just was acting. And so now I know, let me tell you how I learned and how we fix this now. If I bring to the front of his mind that I need him to be intentional about what he's doing, he'll act in a completely different way, because at his core, what he wants is for me to be happy, and he wants me to progress, and he wants me to succeed, and that's actually what he wants. It's just that in the midst of life being busy, sometimes we just switch our brains off and we just do whatever's the easiest thing to do at the time. And so,
and in the midst of that, something to say about that.
I just resonate. That's all.
It's like every guy listening,
what are you thinking about? Nothing. Wow, you're thinking about nothing.
Well, the funniest time of this, actually, I'm surprised it's taking you so long to learn this, Suze, because it was one of the first lessons in our marriage, I thought. When we were lying in bed, and, sweet times when you just want to know what the other one's thinking all the time. And I was lying in bed, and she went, like, what are you thinking? And I'm like, nothing. And she's like, no, I can see the look on your face. You're thinking about something. What are you thinking? I went, nothing. She goes, no, you have to be, like, there is something going, like, I can see the expression on your face. And I went, you want to know exactly what was going through my head at the time you asked me that? She said, exactly what was going through your head. And I went, okay. What was going through my head was boom, 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 boom.
I should have known.
And I was picturing Monsters, Inc. and that was it. Boom, boom, boom was what was going through my head. I think one of the things that, while, maybe I haven't really thought about whether we were hindered by the not processing, maybe the 3-minute fight was actually the hindrance. It was only ever superficially dealt with before you had to move on, because we were constantly in that flow. But I think one of the skills we learned was what we just actually talked about and how we expressed it, because in a radio studio, you constantly have to be on the same page. You have to be communicating to the other person or trusting them in a process. And you got to do it in a way which you can't use words and sometimes can't use as full expressions while something is going on. And you have to make sure that you do it in a way that the other person understands. So part of what I'm talking about here is, if I need to know Susie to know something, we have to pre-work out hand signals in a radio studio. So things like we go, okay, we're running out of time, and we predetermined, okay, we've got to keep this short, we've got to wrap it up, and we predetermined in certain talk breaks, like, so we had a fist and then a pull down, and if it's but then we'd point. So if it fist and a pull down to you means you land this, so that's like a plane landing, like, so therefore you finish this off and you bring it home. I don't need to, or if I go like that and then point to me, I'm saying, I'm going to land this. You don't need to do anything else. I'm bringing this home right now. And so there were certain things that whenever we realized there was something we needed to regularly communicate with no words, we worked out what signal we would use in future if that scenario comes up again. And so what that meant was we could easily say, like this, so what Susie said was, I need to express my emotions like in a way that so that's like the hand signal. How do I do a shorthand that can create an environment that will be on the same page? You get it wrong plenty of times before you work out we need a hand signal for this, or we need a phrase or a sentence. We need a way to say this so that we understand the intent of the other person.
I love that.
It was from that the knees squeeze was born, which is our non-verbal cue at a dinner party or when we're out to say, honey, it's time to go.
Yeah.
That's a good one. That's And if you get really tight, it's like just
I have many
now,
scars
right now.
on my knee.
Okay. Well, okay. So here's the important part, because it's not just a single knee squeeze; it's a reciprocal knee squeeze. So she does a little knee squeeze, and it's my responsibility to squeeze her knee back to say, "I hear you. I understand what you're communicating to me."
Because we used to do that with the boys. That if I was having a conversation with Luke or with another grown up, we did the whole.
Put your hand on the
If you want to interrupt us, put your hand on the arm. I'll put my hand on your hand, and So we've done the same thing in our marriage, and it works.
I think all of that is they're little deliberate things, and it's not universally. Not everybody needs a knee squeeze.
Yeah.
But someone with a talker probably does. A couple, but your marriage might need signals for different things, or might need phrases and words to navigate different things. But the whole key of that is, what do we need to do better with next time, and how do we do it without it becoming a big thing?
Yeah.
And I'll say as well, I really love that this is what you address so much in your podcast, because it's not a skill that retains and maintains. When we did the Prepare Marriage course before we got married, communication came out as our absolute best strength.
Yeah.
We were top of the class on communication, but we haven't been our entire marriage. It's really fluctuated.
Absolutely.
And it is actually an intentional skill that needs to be present. And I mean, even now it's great talking about it and bringing it back to our front of the front of our minds by talking with you about it. But, I think there's probably some things even in the last week we could have done better. And it's great to sort of be mindful of the importance of communication, because it really is what your entire relationship hinges on.
Well, communication is rarely it's usually the symptom, right? It's not actually usually the problem. Everything we've discussed as the things that cause communication problems is actually our trauma, our subconscious responses, our triggers, all the things that have happened in the cumulative sum of our life before that moment that leads us to communicate or not think in a certain way. That when I go, high emotion, quick danger, that's not about Susie's communication at that time. That was about something that happened to me way before I even knew Susie existed. And so it's not her, but at the same point we realize, okay, that's something we have to navigate. So we have to adjust our communication to understand that.
Yeah.
So I think a really important part is whether it's official therapy or whether it's reflection or conversations when the emotions are low.
Yes.
Because you never get these resolutions and the hand signals and the things when the emotion is high.
You get the hand signals, but they're not the right ones.
Yeah,
Right, not those hand signals. Yeah, different ones. there was plenty of time. I think I wanted to say back onto what Susie said earlier on about the assuming the best of me and making those change and actually saying certain things in order to navigate that. What's really important for me as a husband, I appreciate that she's doing that to understand me, but at the same point, I can't take that for granted. I can't be complacent with that, because then that puts all the weight and responsibility on her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to also be proactive in dealing with, okay, I've got these things that I'm struggling with. How do I work on me, and how do I work on making sure that Susie doesn't have to carry the responsibility of being the grown up in every moment like that? Because when she's weak, I need to be strong, and vice versa. So how do I actually do my best? And this goes back to the carrying the mental load stuff that we talked about at the start of the conversation, is how do I also make sure that I'm not just saying, well, that's just who I am. But no, that is who I am. But how do I learn my own skills and how to bypass that weakness and make it a strength?
Yeah. Absolutely. I love all that.
Yeah,
so
that's
much.
who I am is a killer to
100%.
communication.
Yeah.
Well, excuses are pathetic.
Yeah.
There's no point to them. Understanding is the only reason I think that we should ever be talking about why we did or said something.
Yeah.
Is not an excuse. It's not a justification. It's okay. If we can see it and understand it, we can together make different decisions next time or in the future.
Yeah.
So how does Susie understand that maybe that's not my intention? How do I understand that when I don't think about how I come across, I can hurt my wife? So I have to work harder on being mindful not to communicate inaccurately. The deception of my expression versus my intent is my problem to deal with. How to give me the benefit of the doubt of what my intentions are versus how I come across is Susie's to deal with. But together, if we're both working on it, then even when we get it wrong, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
I love that. The understanding is the only reason to give or to talk about the reasons, rather than having an excuse and just being like, nope, that is what it is. Yeah, that's such a good way of phrasing it, because we do get stuck in our excuses and we get stuck in.
If justification is pointless. Like what?
Exactly.
It's already happened.
Yeah. And it gets you nowhere. It doesn't get you anywhere further.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's a good one.
Well, I've loved this conversation. Thank you so much. I feel so encouraged and enlightened on our end.
Yeah.
So we've just loved having you here. And I think the hand signals thing is something really practical that I am going to take away, because there's sometimes where it's really hard to communicate what you want to communicate. I was thinking, have you guys seen The Bear on Disney?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The sorry that they do. I was thinking as you were talking, I was like, that's a really good one, because a lot of the time when they do the sorry, they rub their chest. They put their fist above their chest, and they do it when they're not actually, even they're still arguing, but they start to say it, and it kind of snaps them out of their argument, or snaps them out of their like defensiveness. And I was thinking even something like that as a couple or as a family would be really good, because sometimes it's really hard to get yourself out of those emotions. You know you need to, but it's really hard to like come back and be like, I'm sorry. But even just doing something
such
physical.
a great example.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about The Bear the other day in family communication. So let me throw another one from the show.
Yeah.
First of all, probably not healthy if you're struggling, because you could watch that show and go, at least we're not as bad as them. Not a great standard to live by. But do you know, I can't remember the word. I was trying to think of it the other day. When they walk behind each other.
Behind Chef?
Behind Chef.
Yeah.
Behind Chef. Before they walk behind them, on the off chance that someone's about to step back or that there's going to be an accidental clash, they've just built the habit behind Chef.
Yeah.
And they don't have the mistakes then. They don't have so what Susie says, I need to express my emotion, is the equivalent of behind Chef. It's, I'm going to foresee a possibility.
Great.
And I'm going to avoid it actually going wrong in the first place by giving a warning.
And that's a trained thing that they have too. Do you know what I mean? That's not just like some random thing that someone's doing. It's actually a trained thing.
They learn it in kitchens. Yeah, they do.
Yeah, they've actually learned that. So what you guys are talking about too with you, Susie, like you guys have learned that. Like you've sort of communicated that this is what happens when I'm saying these things, which is really, really important, is learning these things like from the bad conversations, learning how can we make it better next time and not go down that same rabbit hole.
How can we help each other navigate it the way we need to down the track?
I think it's probably fair to be semantic on this too and say there's no such thing as learnt. There's learning. Because no matter we can sit here so easily and give you an account for the times we said it right, and then 80% of the time we haven't, and afterwards we've gone, we should have.
If you put you put the four of us in a room again in a year, this is a whole different conversation.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
I love
and like it's good to remember the times you got it right, because that's the model to keep reshaping of. But don't feel the shame and humiliation of all the times you get it wrong, because we're just trying to get a little bit better tomorrow, a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better.
Yeah. Small, manageable steps that are sustainable.
That's it. Exactly right.
Wow.
Thank you for having us.
It's such a pleasure. To finish us off, I have a really serious question.
Oh, no.
Okay.
That we usually do at the beginning, and we didn't. We just broke the ice straight away, but I need to know your answer, because I was really excited to hear it.
I don't think we actually went through one of our actual questions anyway, so this is good. We can
that is
land
a sign of a really good conversation, so we love it. All right, so guys, would you rather have to communicate your feelings by only using quotes from movie villains or mimicking animal sounds?
Movie villains. Easy.
No, I'm going to go animal sounds. I think there's some crackers in there.
I'm intimidated by the thought of you communicating animal sounds to me. I just don't.
Yeah.
I think. How do we define villain? Does King Julian from the Madagascar movies?
That's a good
he's
question.
a hero, man. God's a hero.
I mean, he's one of my favourites, but often the villains are.
Yeah.
But like I was reminiscing over I would like to be a professional whistler. I'm pretty amazing at it now, but I'd like to be even better.
He has so many good quotes.
I love it.
I would definitely choose movie quotes, but I think some of them could be a little bit
I reckon the animal sounds are very appropriate for angry times.
Okay, I have one more question then on this then. Would you rather have to communicate only through sock puppets for a day, or would you prefer to use finger puppets for all serious conversations? And can you imagine how much that would break the tension? I just feel like that'd be such a great idea.
Right.
I feel like finger puppets for all serious conversations really encapsulates me, actually.
Oh, really?
I would have to go sock puppets because I would need to be able to do the expressive mouth.
Yeah.
Like, and I can't, but this does, the point you made about how great it would be for dealing with your issues, because how could you do it through a sock puppet or a hand puppet and still be, one of our children was going through therapy for dealing with his own emotional regulation stuff. And he was, the therapist was trying to talk to this young child through working out the answers for, different tools that you could have to kind of calm yourself down and stay in control. And to make the story as short as possible, he was trying to lead him to answer breathe.
Yeah.
To take some deep breaths. So he's like, what's something else we could do, with our mouth? And our son sat there and went, beatboxing.
So when you start to get angry,
Just beatbox.
start beatboxing.
And while we laughed because it was so clearly not the answer the therapist was going for, I went through the process and I went, if you are upset, angry, agitated, anxious, and you start openly and out loud beatboxing, take a note of what happens to your emotions.
Yeah, exactly.
100%.
Exactly.
I think I'm going to teach my kids to do
Our
that.
7-year-old is started beatboxing.
Yeah, they do like beatboxing.
Well,
so
they
maybe
start
we can use
spitting,
that.
but they're saying it's beatboxing.
Well,
But,
yeah.
They're learning, babe. They're learning.
So it's many times broken the tension in our house when someone's got a little bit agitated and somebody else has gone.
I love it so much. Oh, that's perfect. I'm going to use that. I think. There you go. He had it right.
Yeah.
He actually had it way better than breathing. Who needs to breathe?
Yeah. This kid's a genius. He is so good at calm. So I know we got to go.
One more.
I get agitated not just at my family but at football.
Yeah, right.
And he doesn't like loud noises and my agitation, but he's learning to cope with dad and to coach dad as he's the adult and I'm the child at football games. And so recently I was expressing myself quite passionately to the television, and he went and made me a coffee. Oh. And I went, oh, buddy, jokingly said, hey, you can make me a coffee. And he went and did it. And I went, I didn't actually mean it. He went, no, I figured if you were drinking a coffee, it'd be harder for you to yell. Okay, but wait, it gets better, because then I'm like, haha, that's funny, and I take a sip of the coffee. Then the second half comes in, and I start to get agitated, and he just tapped me and went, have a sip. He kept prompting me. But what he was doing was communicating, Dad, you're getting louder than I like.
Awesome.
Every time. But it became a joke way to do it. Dad, take a sip. Dad, take a sip.
He's got the positive reinforcement going on as well. He's pavlovian that.
100%.
Defused the emotion. He was a master.
What a clever boy.
That's so good.
We can all learn something from him tonight.
Just take a sip.
Yeah.
Take a sip while
Next
you're
time
beatboxing.
you're angry, I'm going to bring
Take a
you a
sip.
coffee.
Yeah. Sip, beatbox. That's all you need to do, Dad.
That's so good. Wow. Well, I love that so much. Thank you so much for sharing with us today, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. And you are our first ever guest.
What an episode to have.
Wow.
You guys have just been absolutely amazing for a first ever episode of having guests on. That is such an honor for us. And just for you to speak so passionately into that space, we're walking away I don't know. I'm feeling just much lighter, when you have those conversations with someone else that gets it. Like Con Air, man, I get that, and I just feel validated now. It's great.
Absolutely.
Well, and your brains just bounce off each other and your own experiences, and everyone becomes richer because you've had this equal conversation of just people inspiring people. And for me, it's one of my favorite parts of anything we've ever done, and to be able to hang with people that we like, and we always knew we were a kindred spirit. Once we heard you guys for the first time, we went,
so good.
These are people that we are better off when we just hang out with without an agenda. We just hang out and we'll become richer off that moment.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. And
thanks for having us. It's our honor.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Loved it.
Well, we'll chat to you guys next time. Wow.
What an
chat.
episode.
What
an
a chat.
episode. We just said the same thing twice with different words. That's good. Let's go with it.
Wow. We hope you guys are really encouraged by that conversation. There's so many little gems in there and such an amazing energy and vibe from Luke and Susie. And we're just so grateful for them to be joining us today. So,
absolutely. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. Please head over onto Patreon. Check that out. There's bonus episodes on there, up to 16 episodes up on there now. We go a little bit deeper from continuing on from our conversation with Luke and Susie, go a bit more personal. Go check it out. And it's also a great way you can support the podcast.
absolutely.
Thanks, guys. Good chat.
See ya.